Just as a certain full-grown man predicted over a dozen times over the past 3.5 years, mainline Persona games are finally coming to the Nintendo Switch. Rather than releasing the games in the correct order, Atlus decided to put the most recent title out first, and if you ask me, I think the ass-backwards approach is actually a lot better, not only for fans of the franchise, but also for the franchise itself. And if you give me like,
about 8
minutes, I'll explain why. Alright, so I know that it makes sense to play games in order, but not only would I insist that curious Switch newcomers not skip Persona 5 to wait for 3 and 4 to come out later on to play those first, but even if all 3 games came out on the same day, I'd still be singing the exact same tune, with the main reason being that it doesn't really matter which one you play first. Like, yeah, all 3 games share the same timeline and the same world, but outside of a few minor Easter eggs here and there, each game has its own completely original self-contained story. I mean, yeah, they all have a different kind of story, but ultimately, you're always just a high schooler trying to live his or her life while whooping evil candy asses in an alternate dimension, so whichever entry you play first should ultimately come down to the gameplay. And if you're only giving the series a try out of curiosity, which I'd imagine is probably going to be the case for a lot of people, then I think the best bet's to just go with a game that has the mechanics figured out the best, which would naturally be the most recent entry. Personally, I happen to think Persona 5 Royal is the best of the bunch, but when I say that it has the best gameplay mechanics, I just mean that it's the easiest and most intuitive for newcomers to get into is all. I mean, Personas 3, 4, and 5 are turn-based RPGs at their core, sure, but the day-to-day life simulation mechanics could definitely take a little getting used to for newcomers. I'm not saying it's like overly complicated, even in the 3rd game. I just think that 5 explains it and eases you in the best is all, but don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that it holds your hands or treats you like an idiot or anything like that, though. Personally, I started with Persona 4 Gold and got hooked to the franchise immediately, so I'm not saying that anybody would hate these games if they don't start with 5 Royal, but I can't say for sure that I'd have felt the same way if I started with 3, if I'm being honest. I definitely enjoyed the game, sure, but after playing Persona 4 Gold and regular Persona 5, it was definitely a bit rough to go back that far. Not gonna talk about spoilers or anything like that here, but the music and story in Persona 3 definitely hooked me pretty easily, but it didn't take very long to feel spoiled from the later games gameplay-wise. To be fair, I did play the FES version of the game, and most of the issues I had were fixed in the version of the game that's going to be coming to the Switch, P3P, but not having the ability to control my party members in battle definitely had a learning curve in my opinion. It didn't ruin the game for me or anything like that once I considered it to just kind of be part of the challenge, but it certainly took a little getting used to since I never really had to deal with that in any other turn-based RPG I ever played before. That includes the games that came out way before this even. Then there was the issue with the social aspects, which, in Personas 4 and 5, you can grow your bond with everybody up until level 10 without automatically dating anybody. In Persona 3 FES, though, you just kinda sorta automatically enter relationships, which doesn't really matter, I guess, but I don't know. I just like not being forced to take the harem routes all. At least not till the second playthrough, anyway. Then whenever it's nighttime in Persona 3, there's only like one drunken monk to hang out with, and since it doesn't take all that long to max out all your social stats, you'll pretty much just be grinding in Tartarus every other night before long. Which, in Persona 3, is a dungeon in an alternate dimension where you fight shadows that are pretty much demons. I mean, there's more to it than that, but that's pretty much the gist of it. Even when you are grinding in there, your party members will just get tired and leave you to go home after a while. I was absolutely blown away when this first happened. Like, how dare you leave me? What if I die in here, you butt wagons? Again, I probably shouldn't have went into that much detail on why I don't think Persona 3 is the best game to start off with, since Persona 3 Portable did fix a lot of these issues, but even so, I still think that 5 is the most welcoming to newcomers is all. Sure, Persona 4 Golden got me hooked to the entire franchise, and I mean, honestly, I don't really think there's a whole lot of problems with this game. Social aspects are roughly just as good as 5's in the sense that you don't just automatically enter relationships, and you actually have things to do at night, which is a pretty big improvement over the previous game. Sure, you can say the wrong thing and lose a level of bonding every now and then, which isn't a thing in the 5th game, but I just kinda chalk this up to extra challenge more so than a design flaw or anything like that. Doesn't make the game better or worse, but if you ask me, I hope something like this comes back in Persona 6. I don't know, I just like being kept on my toes, I guess. The only issues with Persona 4 Golden are really just things that the 5th game tweaked a little bit to make it better, but still though, if you're Atlus and want to grow the franchise by introducing it to a ton of new people who are curious to try it out, then I think the safest bet is to give people the best first impression. That way people will be most likely to get hooked and want more, and if Persona 5 Royal can't do the trick, then I don't think 3 or 4 can either. At least for your average gamer anyway. If 5 Royal does hook people though, then they'd definitely be a lot more forgiving of some of the mechanics from the older games that might not have aged quite as well, and with a mind that's more open, a lot of these people might actually like 3 or 4 better. Like I said, Persona 4 Golden's an excellent place to start for newcomers who might not be die-hard JRPG fans, but like Persona 5, the game makes you decide for yourself when you're going to tackle dungeons, and if you waste too many days, then you're frigged and get a game over. Persona 3 does have events that you gotta prepare for every month, but you don't really have to do quite as much as you do in the next two games. However, in Persona 5, the game flat out tells you how many days you have left to act, as opposed to making you figure it out yourself based on the weather. Sure, hardcore fans are gonna ride my ass for recommending the games with the easiest mechanics, but honestly, I personally like figuring out when to complete the dungeons in Persona 4, since it's not really that hard to do. However, for newcomers though, I can't deny that the 5th game is a little bit easier and more inviting in that regard. Then there's the actual dungeons themselves, with 5 Royal being the only game that really makes them feel unique with puzzles and things to explore and stuff like that. 3 and 4, they're mostly randomly generated floors where you just keep moving up or sometimes down, or when you're not in Tartarus in Persona 3, they're pretty much just a straight up boss fight and that's all. I don't hate this, of course, but I just think that getting something new with each dungeon feels less repetitive, which is another thing that's just better for newcomers. And again, I'm not going to get into spoilers at all, but in the 5th game, the only way to not get the good ending is pretty much if you make all the bitch choices, but it's not quite as obvious in Persona 4, and the true ending's not obvious at all. Obviously, I can't go into any specifics without spoiling anything, but I beat 4 Golden 3 times with the almost best ending, and I had no idea that there was an even better ending, because I didn't really want to look anything up, and call me an idiot if you want, but I find it very hard to believe that many people would think to do what I missed on the very last day, but I guess it's possible that I am just an idiot. I'm not really calling any of these things imperfections, though. I'm sure some people prefer what they consider to be higher difficulty, and that's totally okay. I'm just saying that it makes for a slightly less ideal game to start with when you're talking about the average gamer is all. And if the whole idea behind bringing Persona games to the Switch in the first place is to grow the franchise, then isn't the best bet to lead with the game that's the easiest to get into? The fact that Persona 5 Royal is easier for newcomers to get into isn't why I personally enjoy it the best, though. I've just always enjoyed the idea of Phantom Thieves like Robin Hood and Kaito Kid. Right behind Phantom Thieves, though, would be my love for detectives, which is essentially what you are in the 4th game, hence why it's a very close second in my opinion. And look, I wouldn't be against the idea of Persona 6 making the choices for the best ending a little less obvious, and overall increasing the difficulty now that Persona 5 Royal is the perfect entry point in the series. And you know what, there's really nothing wrong with being the gateway game of the franchise, and that doesn't make it the best game, of course. I just think it's a no-brainer to make it the first game to put on a new console is all. Anyway, that's all for today, though, but if you got a kick out of my incoherent rambling and disturbing imagery, though, then you should check out this video I made ranking all the Persona 5 Royal characters from good to evil, but if you'll excuse me, though, I gotta go study and increase my knowledge, even though I'm definitely gonna pay for it in the morning and probably die in Tartarus tomorrow night. Later!